The next item of business is a statement by Michael Matheson on the new transport strategy for Scotland, protecting our climate and improving lives. The Cabinet Secretary will take questions at the end of his statement, so there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on Michael Matheson for 10 minutes, please, Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the National Transport Strategy is fundamental in setting out the strategic direction of transport policy for the years ahead, shaping the future provision of transport in Scotland around a shared vision, one that will protect our climate and improve our lives. Since the 2006 strategy, there has been significant change in our society, including in our economy, in our environment and in technology, and the new strategy recognises this. The strategy sets out the challenges associated with this pace of change and how these will be addressed. We have followed a collaborative approach throughout the process of developing the strategy. Over 60 transport partners have participated in developing the strategic framework, helping to shape the vision and consider the challenges and opportunities relating to the transport system. In parallel, our stakeholder engagement programme saw 6,500 people attend over 100 events in rural, island and urban communities across Scotland. And in summer 2019, we held a consultation on the draft strategy, which resulted in over 1,220 responses. We've updated the draft strategy to take account of the views expressed in the consultation and the strategy provision in the Transport Scotland Act 2019. Through our collaborative approach, we have crafted a compelling vision for the future of transport in Scotland over the next 20 years, one that will protect our climate and improve our lives. And our vision is that we will have a sustainable, inclusive, safe and accessible transport system, helping deliver a healthier, fairer and more prosperous Scotland for communities, businesses and visitors. The vision is underpinned by 4 key priority areas for transport: that it reduces inequality, takes climate action, helps deliver inclusive economic growth and improves health and well-being. The vision and priorities are the heart of the strategy and will form the basis upon which we take decisions and evaluate Scotland's transport policies going forward. Another important element of the strategy is our embedding of the sustainable travel hierarchy in decision-making by promoting sustainable and active transport and shared transport options in preference to single-occupancy private cars. And at the national level, the sustainable investment hierarchy will be used to inform future investment decisions and ensure transport options that prioritise reducing the need to travel unsustainably and maintaining our existing assets. These frameworks place sustainability foremost in transport decision-making, and their implementation into all areas of transport planning and investment decisions will help deliver the transport system of the future for Scotland. Transport plays an important part in delivering the fully inclusive society we want to live in. In order to deliver that, we must address the challenges faced across our transport system. The strategy identifies these challenges as they relate to the 4 priorities. The first priority, reducing inequalities, is outcome-focused and reflects the breadth of our ambition. While not a right in itself, transport plays a key role in enabling people to realise their human rights by facilitating access to employment and public services such as healthcare and education. The strategy supports a rights-based approach to transport. It also highlights a range of inequalities that transport can help to tackle, including child poverty, gender inequalities and ensuring accessible transport for disabled people, allowing everyone in Scotland to share in the benefits of a modern and accessible transport system. Regional inequalities and spatial differences are also recognised in the strategy, and the transport system must play its part, connecting people and communities to employment, services and social life events. Under the Takes Climate Action priority, the strategy recognises the biggest moral endeavour of our times in addressing the global climate emergency. There is a responsibility for us all to act, but it's important that government leads from the front and by example. Transport is responsible for 37% of Scotland's greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, the move to low and zero carbon transport is essential to our future well-being. In response, the Scottish Government has made one of the most ambitious climate change commitments in the world to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2045. Over the 20-year period of the strategy, the role of transport in achieving this target will be crucial, not only requiring the use of low-carbon technology, but also significant societal changes, including encouraging people to move towards space-saving and sustainable travel choices, and reducing the demand for unsustainable transport. The measures in the Transport Scotland Act supports emission reductions in transport through encouraging modal shift. As an example of our commitment to this ambition, we are bringing forward transformational long-term funding for buses over £500 million. This significant support to the bus sector will remove congestion impacts from our bus routes, reduce journey times and improve journey time reliability. However, as well as encouraging sustainable travel and reducing emissions, the transport system must also adapt to climate change impacts that are already being experienced. Under the third priority, the strategy recognises the fundamental role of transport in helping to deliver inclusive economic growth. The transport system plays a crucial role in the successful performance of Scotland's economy and ensuring regional cohesion. It enables people to get to work and ensures firms are able to get their goods and services to markets in Scotland and beyond. We are witnessing dramatic change for transport and how we access information, pay for journeys and in the switch from internal combustion engines to electric alternatives. And if Scotland's economic potential is to be realised, our transport system must also adapt to these changes by improving our network resilience, integrating with new technologies and preparing our workforce. We are one of the world's most successfully skilled systems, but we must build on this to address the challenges we face in Scotland, including an ageing workforce, depopulation of rural areas, digitalisation and the global climate emergency. We must also support innovation to stimulate markets so that customers, businesses and industry and our economy at large can harness the opportunities from zero-emission mobility in local and international markets. The fourth interlinked priority the strategy addresses is improving our health and well-being. Our transport system needs to be safe and secure, giving users confidence that they will reach their destination without threat, thereby encouraging active travel and sustainable public transport choices, whilst also benefiting public health. The transport system and the future transport needs of people will be at the heart of decision-making as we deliver healthier and more sustainable places. The transport system must reduce its negative impact on the health and well-being of the people of Scotland. And thankfully, we can take action that can simultaneously tackle multiple challenges. For example, by taking climate action and reducing inequalities, we can, in parallel, benefit public health by encouraging healthier active travel and reducing the associated harmful emissions. Poor air quality has a negative impact on all of our health, with the very young, the elderly and those with pre-existing health conditions particularly vulnerable. In Scotland, particular air pollution is shortening everyone's lifespan by approximately 3 to 4 months. This National Transport Strategy presents the strategic framework for our transport system over the next 20 years. We all have a responsibility for delivering the strategy and making it a success, from local and central government implementing policies to businesses and individuals taking account of their actions when making travel choices. Work has already begun in increasing the accountability of the transport sector and in strengthening our evidence base. Working with partners, we will publish a delivery plan that will set out how the strategy will be delivered. This will be regularly updated and provide detail on how the priorities will be realised through a range of actions, with key interventions flowing from the Climate Change Plan update and the second Strategic Transport Projects Review. Presiding Officer, this 20-year strategy is for all of Scotland. It's far-reaching in its impact and its ambition, and I'm confident its vision and I'm happy to commit it to the Parliament today.
The Cabinet Secretary will now take questions on the issues raised in his statement, and I'll allow around 20 minutes for that. First of all, Jamie Green.
First of all, can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for advance notice of his statement and for a copy of the strategy. Of course, we haven't had a huge amount of time to go through in very great detail, but I can assure Cabinet Secretary that these benches will approach the strategy in a positive and constructive way, and also do so in the spirit that these ambitions must transcend electoral cycles and political boundaries. I can also thank the many stakeholders who have participated in this. I know it's been a far-reaching piece of work. It's hard to disagree that at the heart of a 20-year strategy it must lie four vital things: improving access to public transport, tackling climate change, delivering economic growth, and improving public health. So in all of the above, I can say that we agree wholeheartedly with the premise of the statement that has just been made. Now for the but, Presiding Officer. This is a good document on a first glance, cursory glance. It's an excellent piece of research, and I'm sure there's lots of interesting points in it. But what is noticeable is alarmingly bereft of detail. So if the detail will lie in the delivery plan, what I would like to have seen in the statement is more of those details. What are these policies that will help the government meet the objectives? So let me ask Cabinet Secretary, first of all, the what. You say you'll be working with partners to deliver this delivery plan. Who are those partners and how will you work with them? The when. When will this delivery plan be laid before the Parliament, and how will we be able to adequately scrutinise it? But more importantly, the how. Cabinet Secretary, can you confirm that these ambitions, and they are ambitions, must be matched by investment and funding? Is he confident that NTS2, the delivery plan itself, will not simply become a wish list, but be backed up by adequate funding and a bold investment in infrastructure?
Michael Matheson.
Presiding Officer, can I begin by thanking Jamie Green for his comments in relation to engaging in the process in a constructive fashion and welcoming the provisions which are set out within the strategy. The member will recognise that the strategy is there to set the strategic national framework for policies being taken forward. If he looks at, and I recognise that time has been limited and he's been busy in committee this morning as well, is if you look at Chapter 4, it sets out a range of measures that will be taken forward in meeting the challenge, which starts at page 42, setting out some of the policies. What we'll then do with those policies is we'll then take them forward to develop the delivery plan. The delivery plan process will be one which will be very similar to that of developing the strategy. So those partners who have been involved in helping to shape the strategy will be responsible for setting out the details set in the delivery plan. A key part of the reason for doing that is to make sure that for a strategy to be in place for 20 years, it is going to have to adapt to the changes as we make progress. But I also think it's critical that we have proper full accountability of the progress that we're making against the strategy. That's why the delivery plan will be updated on an annual basis so that you can see the rate of progress, at the level of progress that's been made, and where there's further action that needs to be taken forward in meeting these demands. So I recognise the need to make sure that there are tangible, very specific measures which are taken forward. And that's the reason why there will be a delivery plan. But alongside that, while there will also be a delivery board that will be responsible for the management of that overall, to make sure that we're taking forward the right types of policy initiatives in order to deliver the objectives that are set out within the strategy. So I want to give the member that reassurance that will be part of a key part of how the framework will be delivered over the coming years, with the delivery plan, the framework that will be put in place, and that annual update that will be able to demonstrate the rate of progress that we're making in taking forward the provisions within the strategy.
Colin Smith.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for advance notice of his statement. Presiding Officer, few will have any dispute with a vision of a more sustainable and inclusive transport system, or the 4 priorities set out in this strategy, which Labour very much welcomes. The problem is, Presiding Officer, delivery under this government. Since the last transport strategy introduced in 2006 and refreshed by this government, transport emissions are now higher than they were in 1990. The government are ending their Abellio-ScotRail franchise because it's failed dismally to hit its performance targets. Satisfaction with public transport is at its lowest level for 13 years. Bus and rail fares are rocketing. Growth in active travel has flatlined. Bus passenger numbers have collapsed by over 20% since 2007. And I haven't even mentioned the issue of ferry procurement. Does the Cabinet Secretary accept that if the government are going to turn the warm words from this strategy into action, it will need transformational change? One such change would be to build on the success of the bus pass for older people introduced by Labour and extend that pass to cover young people, a policy that would actually help deliver all 4 of the key priorities in this strategy. Will the Cabinet Secretary commit to that policy, work with Labour and help deliver free bus travel for Scotland's young people?
Michael Matheson.
Presiding Officer, I welcome the initial comments made by Colin Smith in welcoming the priorities which are set out within the strategy. As I've just said to Jamie Green, the next piece of work which has been taken forward is the delivery plan, which will be associated with this. But the member will also recognise that we have made the biggest commitment to investing in bus in Scotland in the last 30 years, with the £500 million that we are investing in bus prioritisation for the very reasons that we've previously set out and which are referred to in my statement as well. In relation to the member's very specific request, of course, I'm always prepared to look at fully costed, detailed proposals that can help to improve our transport system. I'm more than happy to hear from Colin Smith on the details of the costs which are associated with extending the bus pass to the level that the member has stated, so long as it's undertaken in a detailed way. In doing so, to also identify which budget within the transport sector he wishes to see cut in order to meet that additional cost associated with providing any additional provision through the bus pass scheme. The member will be well aware of the financial constraints within which we are operating. Therefore, if there is to be an increase in expenditure in one aspect of transport, it will have to come from another aspect of the transport portfolio. And I'm more than happy to have that engagement with Colin Smith if he has suggestions as to where he wants to see cuts being made and where he wants to see investment being made.
Okay, both the statement and the front bench question and answers have gone well over time, so can I ask everyone else to be as succinct as possible, please? John Finney, followed by Mike Rumbles.
Thank you very much indeed. I thank the Cabinet Secretary for the early sight of his document. This document is not a vision and it's not a strategy that's going to tackle the climate emergency. I wonder, would the Cabinet Secretary agree that we need an integration of policies, particularly in connection with planning, if we're going to see a significant move in what's required, that is the carriage of goods by rail rather than road. There's a lot of information in there about poor air quality. That has to be a greater pickup of the carriage of freight by rail, and not, as the answer I always get from the Scottish Government, that these are simply commercial matters. This is a matter the Scottish Government will require to lead on. Michael
Matheson.
Presiding Officer, yes, there is a need to make sure that we have a collective vision around these matters. The member may want to consider the detail that was set out in the Infrastructure Commission report, which I commissioned, that highlights the need to look at the existing regulatory framework in order to look at how that can help to support us in creating the just transition that's necessary to meet the net zero carbon targets which we've set for 2045. So I do recognise there's a need to make sure we take a joined-up approach to these matters, which is the approach that we've taken in helping to shape the national transport strategy. And I've got absolutely no doubt that as we move forward with the climate change plan, the infrastructure and investment plan, the capital spending review, all of which will demonstrate the leadership that this government is prepared to give in order to make sure that we achieve our climate change ambitions. Being absolutely no doubt about our determination to ensure that we meet these targets, and the measures that we will take forward over the course of the coming months will assist us in delivering that.
Mike Rumbles, followed by Gillian Martin.
We know the Scottish Government still has a contract to support Heathrow expansion, despite it already being the single biggest source of carbon emissions in the UK. The Cabinet Secretary has just said that the Scottish Government must lead from the front in tackling the climate emergency, and this could be put to the test tonight. We at Westminster have tabled an amendment for a vote to cancel Heathrow's third runway. Will the Scottish Government change its mind on support for Heathrow expansion and asks its Westminster colleagues to join the Liberal Democrats down there in tonight's vote?
Michael Matheson.
Presiding Officer, the member will be well aware of the critical importance that good air connectivity has to the Scottish economy and to Scotland as a whole, and need to make sure that we help to protect and improve that, while at the same time taking forward the ambitious proposals we have for Scotland to become a net zero air area within the period of 2040, using new technology in order to reduce air emissions over the coming years. We're already demonstrating that by the ambition we have for the use of new technologies, for example, the work that's taking place in Orkney to look at alternative fuel types for aircraft, all of which within the aviation sector have a role to play. So we'll play our part in helping to support the development and the ambition around getting to a zero carbon aviation sector in Scotland within our regional network, while at the same time helping to ensure that Scotland remains well connected to key global parts of the world to help to support and sustain our economy.
Gillian Martin, followed by Maurice Gordon.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I want to ask Cabinet Secretary about rural areas. Those in rural areas do not have the equity of access to public transport of their urban counterparts, and for many rural residents, a life without access to a car is currently just not feasible. How is the strategy recognising that rural areas who want to play their part in reducing emissions must have particular and tailored interventions to help us achieve our climate change ambitions?
Michael Matheson.
Presiding Officer, the report in itself, or the strategy itself, recognises the very particular challenges we have in Scotland and rural areas, and a range of the measures that can be taken forward. So, for example, about helping to support and sustain public transport where that is possible within rural areas, helping to help connect communities. So, for example, some of the work that's been put into investing in rail in the north east of Scotland with the provision of new railway stations and new infrastructure, which is a £300 million project which is helping to improve connectivity in rural areas in the north east of Scotland, are all examples of helping to make sure that our rural communities remain as well connected as possible, but also to recognise that there will be a need for good road connectivity within our rural communities. So, for example, the need to make sure that we have good quality roads such as the A9 investment in order to help to sustain our Highland economy in the years ahead is absolutely critical to the Highland economy overall in the years to come, while also supporting the transition towards low-emission vehicles, assisting people to move to electric and low-emission vehicles in our rural communities where they do have to make use of a car, and to make sure that we have the spread of charging infrastructure to support people in making that decision. So a variety of measures that have to be taken forward, but the particular needs of the rural communities is absolutely critical, and the strategy recognises that.
Can I repeat the need for members to be succinct in both questions and answers, please? Maurice Golden, followed by Alistair Allen.
Thank you. The Cabinet Secretary is right. Government should lead on climate change. However, active travel is declining and transport emissions have barely changed in 30 years. Therefore, will the Cabinet Secretary take this opportunity to back Scottish Conservative calls to default public procurement to electric vehicles where possible? Yep.
Michael Matheson.
Presiding Officer, I very much hope that the member, when it comes to supporting or considering whether it supports our budget or not, will support the approach that we are taking to active travel, because we have doubled the active travel budget over the course of the last two budgets, and we'll certainly be seeking to make sure that we build on that in the years ahead, specifically in relation to looking at the making use of greater use of electric vehicles. We have a very extensive programme of fleet renewal which we are supporting right across our public sector, to allow them to move to ultra-low emission vehicles and in particular electric vehicles. Actually the most extensive programme that we're taking forward in the whole of the UK in order to support that transition, whether it be in our NHS or whether it be in our police service. And I'm certainly keen to make sure that we build upon that moving forward. There's a range of measures that we need to think about that we can further put in place to support that transition, and we are certainly open to looking at doing that, whether it be through procurement or through other means. But it's important we make sure that we support the public sector in that transition and do it in a managed way that allows them to continue to provide essential public services.
Alistair Allen, followed by Pauline McNeill.
The National Transport Strategy recognises, I am sure, that the very welcome growth in tourism can have impacts on the transport system, whether that be roads or ferries. Is the Cabinet Secretary able to set out any of the measures which he or ferry companies will be undertaking this summer and beyond in order to cope with what will likely be a record number of visitors?
Michael Matheson.
Presiding Officer, the member is correct to point out the growing level of tourism to our island communities and the significant pressure that's placed on our ferry service. One of the benefits that our ferry services and our island communities have had in recent years has been the introduction of RET in helping to make it more affordable for people to make such journeys. But what I can say to the member is that it's part of the work we're taking forward around ferries is to look at maximising the existing assets that we have within the fleet and to make sure that timetabling optimises their use, particularly during key periods of the year. And I know that work is presently been undertaken to look at this summer's timetabling to ensure that we maximise the use of those assets during the summer months in order to help to support the tourism sector within the member's constituency and other island areas.
Pauline McNeill, followed by Willie Coffey.
What is the message in the statement for poorer families who will not be able to afford electric vehicles? Especially when alternatives, even in Glasgow, show that you cannot get a bus from the Queen Elizabeth Hospital after 6 o'clock at night to Darnley on the south side of Glasgow. That's how bad it is. Which of the 4 priorities, can the Minister tell me, will ensure that poorer people will not be left behind in this transport strategy?
Michael Matheson.
Presiding Officer, the tackling inequality, ensuring that we create the type of inclusive economic growth that we want is absolutely critical to tackling the types of financial inequality that people can experience as a result of not being able to get access to the right type of transport. But the member made a very specific request around what we're doing around electric vehicles. The member may be aware that we have what is a very comprehensive programme to help to support people who want to purchase an electric vehicle because of the costs associated with it, that we run through the Energy Saving Trust in Scotland to support people with an interest-free loan for a 6-year period. And we've recently changed that to allow them to use it for second-hand vehicles. We're the only part of the UK that allows that to happen to support them in doing that. And secondly, we're also taking forward, well, if the member wants to listen to what I'm saying, she may find it helpful, because we're also taking forward a range of work with electric car clubs, with social housing providers, to help to support them in having a pool of electric vehicles that people who are residents within their social housing provision can make use of on a regular basis. That programme was started over a year ago, which I launched in Bridgeton as part of our just transition towards low-carbon technology. So the member can be assured of the measures that we've already put in place, but also has been highlighted by the strategy. Tackling inequality is critical, and that's why it's a key element of the strategy and will be part of our policies, as it is at the present moment, in the years to come.
Willie Coffey.
Thank you. I welcome this SNP government's ambition to phase out new petrol and diesel cars and vans in Scotland by 2032, ahead of the UK, and also the commitment to phase out all petrol and diesel vehicles from public sector fleets by 2030. Clearly key to this is enabling their replacement with electric vehicles, as the Minister has just said, and the rollout of charging infrastructure. What plans does the government have to put that infrastructure in place to allow us to meet these targets?
Michael Matheson.
Presiding Officer, the member raises a very important point, because to support and assist people and be able to actually make the transition to ultra-low emission vehicles and electric vehicles is to make sure they have confidence in the charging infrastructure, which is why Scotland, as has been recognised, has got the most extensive public charging network of any part of the UK, with the exception of the centre of London. recognising the very extensive public network that we've now created to support people in that transition. That will be critical in giving people the confidence that they can have in moving to ultra-low emission vehicles and to electric vehicles. We've invested over £30 million over the course of the last couple of years in providing this type of technology and access to charging points, and we'll continue that level of investment going forward because it will be critical in helping to support the transition to low emission vehicles.
Rachel Hamilton.
Consultation indicates that specific focus must be given to rural and remote communities in the strategy, and I welcome its aims very much so. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that this strengthens the business case to extend the likes of the Borders Railway, and does he concur that linking the south of Scotland to the West Coast Main Line would address regional inequalities, level up spending and improve the lives of people that live far from the city, such as people in Newcastleton?
Michael Matheson.
Well, Presiding Officer, the member will be aware that we've already completed and published the Borders Transport Corridor Study, which highlighted the options of extending the line within the borders. I welcome the fact that the UK Government have now matched us in providing £5 million towards carrying out some more detailed appraisal work on the prospects of extending the Borders railway line. That work has presently been taken forward, and of course, once that has been completed, it will be considered as part of the STPR2 process in order to identify as a project for future investment as part of the STPR2 timescale. So that work has already been taken forward, Presiding Officer, and will be considered in due course as part of, as all projects are, as part of the STPR2 process.
That concludes questions on the statement of the new transport strategy for Scotland. I'm sorry I was unable to call Claudia Beamish, Emma Harper, Lewis MacDonald and Stuart Stevenson. And could I suggest that all groups have a think and perhaps a discussion about how they can best use statements and questions so that their colleagues are not disadvantaged. We'll move on to the next item of business.